do a little presentation of what we're doing here in robotics at PACE. So the PACE colleagues know what's going on here. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that, and then I'm going to say just a few words about ethics, since that is the point here. So first we'll take a look at, we do have a robotics lab. I'm not going to go through the whole site or anything. I'll talk a little bit about some of our work during my presentation. Just wanted you to know we do have a robotics lab. Not many people at PACE have been there and seen it. I know Michael has, not many others. Everybody's invited to come and see what we've got. Okay, so I'm going to talk first about the work that we're doing, particularly the work with Christopher. Christopher's my main graduate student at the moment. And we're doing what we call cognitive robotics. I'll just describe this a bit as we go through it. We're developing a cognitive architecture for a robot. We're working with, collaborating with Fordham University and Brigham Young University to build the cognitive architecture. And I'm not going to go through all the technical points. This isn't a technical presentation. But I did want to stress that the direction of our work is to build an architecture that, you know, it's a cliche at this point, but that works like a human brain does, which is not the way modern robots, especially not drones, work. So we are taking a cognitive approach. In particular, we're building our work on a cognitive architecture that is originally from Carnegie Mellon, the SOAR cognitive architecture, and modifying it so that it works in robotics. Typically, cognitive science has investigated things like playing chess and doing logic puzzles and things like that, which are not sensory motor. They don't interact with the physical world. And our work is trying to bridge that gap so that we have a human approach. You know, the old dream of AI, to have a C3PO, you can actually shake its hand and talk to it and so on. So, for instance, in our approach to computer vision, I don't know if any of you have ever played with something like a Kinect from Microsoft and so on. The way it works, it just takes a picture of everything. So if it takes a picture of the scene, it's going to pay just as much attention to the crack on the floor as it is to the details of people's faces. It's kind of mindless. Our approach is to change vision into a search problem based on the theory that people search. As I'm doing now, I look around, and as you're doing when you look at me, your eye searches to try to find the relevant detail that needs to be modeled. And so, for example, the way, a quick overview of what we're doing is we have a camera and we have a multimedia platform. You can think of it as a video game platform with a physics plug-in. And our robot builds in real time a 3D model of what it sees in its cameras. So it sees a table, it grabs a model of the table from its library, creates a mesh model of the table in the physical world, sees a person, skeletonizes, grabs a model of a person. So this is a very difficult thing to implement, and that's our task. So let's get that. So there's Christopher, rendered by our system, a nice empty mesh, but it works very quickly, works in real time, grabs a picture, again, the model, the pictures on the left are from the old Wikipedia page on eye saccades. So it shows how the human eye will look around a person's face to look at the important things to build a model. And that's the way our system works. It builds a nice, realistic model of Christopher in the near real time right now, so he can be rendered in the virtual world. So our point is, our approach is a very ethical one. We want to have the things that everybody talks about, the good things. We want to have robots that can take care of you when you're old, that can help you in the hospital, that can interact with you naturally because they build a model, they can predict what's going on. We do have a bunch of videos on our website showing simple things such as, this is just a screenshot from one of our videos, the right eye and the left eye, watching a ball bouncing around the room, and then the virtual world. So what our system can do now, if I throw a ball over there, and I know it's going to bounce off the wall and then bounce off that wall and come back over here, we can run that very fast forward in our physics simulation, predict within a fraction of a second the ball is going to be over here, and then our robot goes over here to get the ball rather than very blindly following the ball. It doesn't sound very impressive, but I think that's about the state of the art of things right now in autonomous robotics. So right now we're adding people. The big goal is to be able, again, to have a robot. Our acid test is to have our robot go down the street in Manhattan without bumping into people. And to be able to predict this person's walking here, these 3 people are going over here. I'll wait, and then I'll go. We do this effortlessly without even thinking. Robots don't do that. They just, unless they're carefully engineered with specific programs to avoid the people in such an unstructured situation, they simply can't function. But, of course, any robotic technology that's developed could also be used for some war. So, obviously, the work we're doing could be used to develop a heads-up display for soldiers using something like Google glasses, or we have a pair of physics glasses that do essentially the same thing. I'm going to make a few comments on robotics and war. I know some of this is covering ground that's very familiar to some of you. So I was thinking a lot, have been thinking a lot about my work over the years. I have not been published in this area, some of the people here have. But I've always tried to be not to be one of the robotics researchers that he was talking about, the ones who never think about ethics and don't know what it means. I definitely know what it means. And thinking about, for example, the drones, the use of any machine has always multiplied the power of an individual. That goes back to the Middle Ages when you used cannons to destroy castles. You could win a war without actually having to fight somebody one-on-one. So I was spending some time trying to identify aspects of the use of robots in war that are really qualitatively different and don't just ramp up the factor. And one is the scale of an individual's power. So, we can all remember atrocities from the Vietnam War and from the current war. We can remember this. It's very easy for a person to make a bad decision or to snap under pressure to kill a bunch of people. But that's always been 10 or 20 people. It hasn't been 10 or 20,000 people. The ability for a person, for example, to control an entire squadron of tanks is just around the corner. So the ability for one person to do something on a truly horrible scale, I don't think has really, I can't think of a convincing example where that has happened before without having a lot of people buy into it. There's certainly been atrocities on a large scale, but they involved a lot of people. The idea of one person could just go out and say, I'm really angry today and just kill 10,000 people, I think is going to happen. And so although I'm afraid of autonomous military robots, certainly, I don't think autonomy is really necessary for the military robots to be threatening because of this leveraging of the factor of power. You just have one person snaps, then the My Lai massacre will look like nothing. And we'll have an issue that could last for centuries and could stay in our countries. This is a very, very bad possibility. And I was rereading Bertrand Russell's argument during the Cold War. He made the argument that we should unilaterally disarm because I made a lot of very good arguments that the accidental nuclear war was inevitable. Now, he turned out to be wrong because, fortunately, we didn't have an accidental nuclear war. But I'm going to make essentially the same argument. I'm going to use faculty meetings as the example since we have so many faculty here. You can never get a bunch of faculty to agree on something. So if you have a lot of people involved, well, if you're in chair of a department, as some of us have been, trying to get them to agree on something is just about impossible. So if you have a lot of people involved in a decision, it really slows down the process. And this is good, right? And that's, I think, why Bertrand Russell's warnings did not come true. It really wasn't the case you could just have one person who could start a war. The scenario in the Failsafe movie was difficult to have come about. But as we get to the point where one person can control an entire suite of robots, I think it's inevitable. So I'm going to restate his argument, but in modern terms. Another point is the speed of war. So it's always taken a lot of time to prepare for a war. In the Gulf War, it took us months to get all those troops over to Iraq and provide for the food and the entertainment and everything. They had to build an entire city. I read that the Russians actually laughed at us, that it took us so long to get all the troops over. They said, we have nothing to worry, because at that speed, we can respond to anything the Americans can do very easily. But if you're dealing with robots that don't need the support structure, especially if they're disposable robots, you don't care when they come back, this time will go down rapidly to zero. So you can just have a few container ships, send them over, unload everything you need, and attack. It could be possible to at least launch a war or to change a war by really scaling it up dramatically before the public can really react to it. And I think that qualitatively changes the idea of war. And finally, the one that really worries me the most is war becomes a business. So we talk a lot about dehumanizing the opponent, and that's always been the case. We've always dehumanized the opponent. But at least you could connect with your own troops. So a military leader always had a lot of troops. If you tried to push the troops too far, said, I'm going to make you capture just one more objective, and it's not that important, and some of the troops get killed, the commander loses respect of his fighters. And this happens. There are many cases in which this happened. But now, I mean, they're just robots, so they're just assets. You just want to get a maximum return on your investment. So right now in Afghanistan, we have a number of soldiers who have returned and are students here at PACE. And you connect with them. You talk to them. You want to know what it's like. There's a natural bond. You respect them. People don't connect with the people controlling drones. So somebody's in Nebraska and pushes buttons and kills people. At the end of the day, he goes home and has dinner with his family. It's just another day at the office. So, it's just a business. You would root for General Patton in World War II and say he's at the front of his troops leading them. Even if we were fighting a war that was a good war, like World War II, we said, well, we're going to destroy Nazism. And everything is ethically good. We say this is very good. Everything we're doing is great. Who would you root for? War used to be us versus them. We used to think we are actually fighting people, and we're fighting for a cause. Even if you are fighting for a cause, and even if it's completely ethical, completely defensible, who would care? It's just a business. It's just like calling the exterminators to take care of the bugs on your lawn or something. You're just going to call the troops, the military troops, and have them wipe out the opponents. And it's not going to be any human thing at all. It's not going to be any human dimension. So this qualitative change really bothers me. It's just the military just becomes a war company selling us a product. The analogy I could think of recently was in the community where I live, the firefighters have all the kids come every year, and they have the fire engines, and everybody gets to shake hands, and they pick up the kids, and it's a very human thing, so you know that when you have a fire, these people are going to show up, and they're fighting for you, and it creates a bond. If all the firefighters are robots, it's just a service. You just say, get them here, put the fire out, and expect that to be done. It's just another job. So the human dimension is lost, and I think that makes it far easier to fight a war because you no longer really care one way or the other. So my summary is just that we're one of the universities. We're not on the same scale as CMU. I don't have 70 colleagues. I have 0. So it's just me. But we are doing this, and we do think about the way in